Oh my gosh. All right. Hello. My name is Ethan Zamora, and I'm doing my presentation here on Hashimoto's disease. This is for my signature assignment for physiology. So, the anatomy of this Hashimoto's disease is a disease that will affect our thyroids, and it will cause it to swell up and not produce the hormones that it's supposed to be producing. This will affect our digestive tract, our reproductive system, our nervous system, our musculoskeletal system, as well as our circulatory system. So right here, I have a diagram of what it would look like to have a goiter, or what is also known as an enlarged thyroid. Right here, this is what the regular thyroid size would be, and this is about the size of what a goiter would look like. So the hypothalamus, it is it's a part of our brain that will release a hormone called thyrotropin releasing hormone, which will signal the anterior side of our pituitary gland to secrete thyroid stimulating hormone. That will travel through our bloodstream and reach our thyroids, and from there, our thyroids will produce two different hormones, triiodothyronine and thyroxine. These hormones will travel throughout our body and our bloodstream, and it's used to stimulate growth as well as regulate the amount of energy that we use. Iodine is extremely important in this because iodine is what is used to produce these two hormones. And our thyroid will use this to produce those two hormones. Okay, so the physiology, what I already had talked about, our thyroids, they're controlled by a feedback loop, and that is also connected to both our pituitary gland and our hypothalamus. So, um, when we have a when we don't eat enough iodine or we don't ingest enough iodine, our thyroid will start to swell up because it's not producing enough of those two hormones. Um, since the goiter is not producing those hormones, our pituitary gland will notice and it will start signaling with TSH to stimulate the goiter to try and produce, or our thyroid to produce more of the T3 and the T4. Since the reason why our thyroid will grow to that size is because since we're not having enough iodine, it wants to make up for the lack of T3 and T4 that is being produced. So it will start to create more cells, follicular cells, to produce more of hormone. So, like I already had talked about, goiters are formed from lack of iodine in our diets. That it is extremely important because we need those to produce T3 and T4. Um, that would cause our thyroid to grow so it can produce more. It doesn't really produce more. Because of, like I already also said, because of that, the low levels of those two, the negative feedback loop between our the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and our thyroid is disrupted. So I only wrote down two symptoms, but two common symptoms that I wrote down were a slowed heart rate. So our thyroid will, the hormones that it produces help us regulate our heart rates, cholesterol, and as well as our blood pressure. Lack of this hormone will cause a cholesterol buildup in our arteries and our veins. That can also cause blockages, and it would increase our blood pressure. Um, it would also make our veins less elastic, veins and arteries less elastic. Uh, Women will have this one. It is issues with menstruation and fertility. So this hormone can also help with regulate, or it not can, it will, it does help with regulating menstruation. Having a deficiency in these hormones will cause your periods to either be heavy, to be light, or to be just extremely irregular or weird. Um, Having hypothyroidism can also produce um, large amounts of prolactin, which is the hormone that produces milk in our bodies, and it also inhibits ovulation. Oh, diagnosis. There are two ways that this can be diagnosed. THS test, which is our thyroid stimulating hormone. Um, we can take a blood test and we can see how much of if this is a high if there are high levels of this in our blood or if they're regular, and if we notice that there are high levels of it, we'll take a second test that will test the thyroxine levels that are in our blood. If the thyroxine levels are way too low and the thyroid stimulating hormone levels are high, then that will mean that you have Hashimoto's or you would just have hypothyroidism, which is very similar. So treatments for Hashimoto's disease. So very common medication that is dispensed to patients is called Synthroid, or the generic name of it is called levothyroxine. This medication is an agonist, and there are a few side effects, but I only decided to put two down. The two like really ones that stood out are changes in our menstrual cycle or in a woman's menstrual cycle. So and changes in appetite. Um, since our thyroxine levels help regulate the menstrual cycles, you'll notice a difference after you start taking levothyroxine if it wasn't already different. Surgery is also an option that is available to people. It's to remove the big goiter that makes you look like a frog. So you'll have that big old thyroid. I saw a video on how the procedure that they go through to remove it, and it's a very I wouldn't want to go through that. Okay, AI. So doctors and physicians today are using a lot of AI to help them with diagnosing illnesses and also coming up with treatment plans for their patients. Um, they created this AI to mimic a human's thought process to help with decision making and making and making up um, treatment plans for patients. Uh, so the AI that was made for the thyroid, anything that has to do with thyroids, these rely heavily on a lot of information. So they had to, over time, get the information from different medical centers that were willing to contribute their knowledge to AI. Okay, demographics. Who is more likely to get this disease? Now, women are a lot more likely to get this disease than men are. They are about 4 to 10 times more likely than a man to have this disease. So the age that this disease is more common in is around from 30 to 50. There are some cases where younger people, younger teenagers, and younger like little girls will actually be affected by this. I met a little girl, about 8 years old, who had hypothyroidism. Um, so there's no exact amount of people or estimate amount of people that have this disease in the United States, but about 5 in every 100 Americans have this disease. So hypothyroidism is treatable, and patients can usually live about a normal life expectancy, but the mortality rate of this is about 50%. It's usually due to patients having an underlying medical condition, and that sadly will put them out of commission. And here are my references. Thank you.